Hey, everybody, welcome back to For the Sake of the Argument. On today's episode, we spoke with Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow about her run for U.S. Senate. We talked about the need to reach people who may be disillusioned with politics, what Democrats can do better, the top issues in the Senate race, and frustrating moments in the Michigan legislature. I bet there's a lot of those. If you like what you see, make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. See you next time. I'm Lori Goldman. So, Mallory McMorrow, welcome. Thank you for coming today. I want to know how you're doing all this. You're running all over the state. You launched a new book in March. You are a wife. You are raising a small daughter. How are you doing all this?
I've got a great team. First of all, shout out to Ray, world's best husband, world's best dad. There was a reporter who came out and was doing a profile of me and wanted to interview Ray, started asking Ray a bunch of policy questions, and he had to go, time out. I'm not orchestrating Mallory behind the scenes. I'm her husband and I'm Noah's dad. So there's that. And then I've got a kick-ass campaign team. This is the first time I've ever had a real team. So I'm very hands-off. I brought in some of the best people in Michigan who absolutely love what they do. And I get very luxuriously one day off a week.
Well, that's quite a lot for some women, let me tell you.
I know.
You became a national name when a Republican colleague of yours, called you a groomer. And your speech in response to that took off like a wildfire. What do you think Democrats are doing or should do? Should we do what Michelle Obama says, and when they go low, we go high? Or should we have a little backbone, a little gumption like you showed when you called out the Republicans and their war against everything that's good?
Well, look, I'm obviously biased. I think we got to learn how to throw a punch, and we got to throw a punch on our own terms. Republicans are very good at painting Democrats into a corner to have the fight they want us to have when we have the upper hand and we should own it. I think a lot of people misunderstood Michelle Obama. She didn't say, when they go low, we stay silent. So what I did in my speech, I didn't name call. I didn't accuse Lana Tice of some horrible thing. I took my own identity back, and I said loud and clear, I'm a straight, white, Christian, married, suburban mom who knows that hate only wins when we let it happen. And, by the way, that people who are different are not the reason why healthcare costs are too high and not the reason why housing costs are too high. People get that, and we have to be willing to punch and then get back to having the fight on our terms.
The Democratic Party sometimes doesn't have a good response or good messaging. The Republicans are out there calling out everything from gas stoves to Bud Light. And we're struggling. We're struggling, maybe playing defense when we should play offense. You've said, I believe in the past, that we need to do things a little differently. We need new blood. We need new infusion of new ideas. You called out Chuck Schumer. Mm-hmm. So tell me, what does a new, effective, more resonant with the public Democratic Party look like to you?
Well, look, I know I giggled a little bit, but the two examples you even brought up, gas stoves and Bud Light, are things that people deal with in their everyday lives. And too often Democrats are talking about the continuing resolution and procedural moves and bill layovers, and we're trapped in this Washington bubble. I had one of my constituents from Rochester actually reach out once, and she was so frustrated. And she said, it feels like Democrats and Republicans are sitting at a table playing chess. Republicans have set the house on fire and flipped the table over, and Democrats are still there planning our next move. So just talk about things in normal people's lives. Bud Light is something that people drink in their everyday lives. Talk about their kids, talk about their house, talk about their lives, and get out of this inside baseball Washington bullshit that nobody cares about.
Your new book that we mentioned that came out in March, Hate Won't Win, talks about being a playbook to get people involved in their democracy. You also talk about losing your dad, which I can relate to. You never get over that. Hitting your burnout, but still plugging away. What can we do, and what can we say to those that say, the system's rigged, why should I take my valuable time, my money, my efforts, when whatever I do isn't going to make a fucking bit of difference. And that was me right now saying that.
Yeah, it's real. First of all, to correct the record, my dad is still very much alive and with us.
Oh, okay, sorry.
He lives in South Bend.
All right, I'm going to yell at someone after this.
Didn't want to just, Dad, if you're watching this podcast, I don't know, a camera, like we didn't kill you on the podcast. You're still here. We love you. No, I can't wait to see you.
I was transferring. I lost my dad, so everybody should have a lost dad.
Ray lost his dad. So, there's that. Man, we got into dead dads really quick in this podcast.
No.
We're going to come back. Okay. We're resetting. All right. How to not get burned out. So something that I talk about in the book, and it's a really hard muscle to build up because the strategy of the Trump administration is to overwhelm us. The amount of garbage that comes at us every single day across their social media channels, across the news, across executive orders and legislation and this big, horrible bill. It is designed to overwhelm us. It is supposed to be a game of whack-a-mole where you are chasing everything that they put out in the water. And my advice in the book is that everybody should take the time to sit with themselves and understand what is their one thing. What is the one issue that really motivates you, that's going to make you get up every single morning, frankly, for the rest of your life, not just until the next election, and want to participate. We've got a constituent named Jane in our district who is a survivor of domestic violence. And this has become her one issue, is dedicating her entire life to making sure that people don't go through what she went through. We have legislation that is now law in the state of Michigan to provide address confidentiality for survivors of domestic abuse because of Jane's advocacy. So now every time there's a bill that might impact domestic violence victims or survivors at all, she's calling me and I'm calling her. We have a real relationship because of her unfortunate expertise that she wants to share. We've seen real change on issues like gun violence because somebody like Shannon Watts woke up one morning watching the school shootings play out on TV, watching babies get killed in a classroom, and deciding this is enough. I'm going to do everything I can to change this, and being laser focused on building Moms Demand Action from a Facebook group into the most powerful anti-NRA advocacy group in the entire country. And we've seen change happen over time, but she was focused on one thing. So if everybody can find their one thing and frankly let go of everything else, which is going to feel really uncomfortable, but if we all trust that every single one of us is finding our one thing and we are laser focused on that thing every single day, then we're going to be okay. And the way that I think about it is, anytime you want to learn something new, if I wanted to learn how to cook and play the violin and become a marathon runner and become a podcaster, I would suck at all of those things. But if I pick just one thing and do that thing every day, I might have a chance of getting good at it.
That was an excellent answer, and I'm not going to give up just because of you.
There you go.
All right. I'm going to give a trigger alert to establishment Dems that hate when I talk about other Dems. But earlier this year, you voted against gutting what the Michigan Supreme Court ruled that would have raised minimum wage for tipped workers. Many of your Senate Democrats, I think there were 8, I don't know them all, they voted against raising that wage. What's the deal? Do you think that some electeds, I know on both sides, but are they voting for constituents or are they voting for the people that are lobbyists, corporate interests, things like that? And when is it going to stop?
So look, I want to go back to kind of how to be a good advocate and how to really advocate confidently. What we saw within the Capitol, and I can say this very openly, is that when the Supreme Court ruling came down that would have required the one fair wage ballot initiative to go into effect as written, we didn't see people coming to the Capitol to advocate to keep that ruling in effect. It felt like there was a victory lap and that was sort of it. Fortunately or unfortunately, in my mind, unfortunately, the Restaurant and Lobbying Association did an excellent job of rallying bartenders, servers, restaurant owners to come consistently, almost every week, to the Capitol. Jim Runstead was out taking a picture with servers from all around the state, and I was a bartender. I bartended my way through college. I think that a lot of bartenders and servers had been convinced that if this were to go through, then they would no longer get tips, or they would lose their jobs, or their restaurant would go under. And I want to give my colleagues a little bit of grace. I think there was a willingness to listen to people. Perception is reality. And we just didn't see that advocacy from the other side. Now, where I ended up on is believing I am somebody who collected signatures for one fair wage before I even ran for office. This was something that I cared deeply about, again, because I had been a bartender and a server, and I knew that on good days, I made $1,000 a night. On bad days, I barely took home, $20, $30 if nobody came in. We needed living wages. We needed to ensure that you could take a sick day if you got sick and you didn't have to find somebody to cover your shift. That's just basic decency. And I got to a position where we should have let it go into effect as written. And then if there were some administrative changes that needed to be tweaked, because I do think there was some vagueness in the language, we could do that after the fact. So this is all just to say, if Dobbs taught us anything, it's that court rulings are not the end. They're another step in the process. So if it's something that we all care about, I was reaching out to some of the groups that had organized for the ballot initiative to say, hey, I'm trying to sound the alarm from the inside here because I hear the conversations from some of my colleagues. We need to see bodies. We need to see people advocating because this fight is not done yet.
Well, I just want to say one more thing. It's a civil rights issue.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that the owners of the plantations convinced the slaves that they'd be better off staying on the plantation too. There's no difference. You support public option for health care over Medicare for all. Why not just support universal health care?
It's a great question. And one of the most devastating things in the Affordable Care Act was that the public option didn't become a part of it. It was a part of the legislation right up until the very end, and there just weren't the votes to pass it. This has been something that I've evolved into, frankly, from a lot of the work that I've done and relationships I've built with union leaders who have told me very bluntly, look, we have collectively bargained for the health care that we want, that we need, and who are you to take it away from us if we want it? The equivalency, we already see how this works in our country with education. We have built up an education system in this country where we have guaranteed public education. I was a K-12 public ed kid through my childhood, and then I went to Notre Dame. So I'm a perfect example of I was the public option and then a private option at some point in my life where it made sense, and frankly, I could afford it, and it made sense for my values and where I wanted to go. I believe that that's going to set us up for the best success as a country is modeling our healthcare system off of our education system where we have a guaranteed public option that we all pay into that is available for everybody that frankly, when we think about the marketplace, even just having a public option is going to force private insurers to compete, to bring costs down, to make sure you have more affordable medications and provide better service to justify their costs if they're going to continue charging for private healthcare coverage. So that's my mindset. I've talked to just way too many people who I think are fearful of what a public option might look like, who want to keep their plan, but having a real public option forces the market to change dramatically.
If you were Queen of the United States, which who knows, we may have that coming up,
Oh, boy.
Would you support it? Would you support universal health care if you could just wave a wand and make it happen and you didn't have any implications?
I think, again, I go back to, I would model it after the education system. Some people choose private, some people choose public, and universal healthcare to me means everybody has access to healthcare. I am somebody who graduated from college right into the recession. I graduated with a degree in industrial design. I wanted to be a car designer in 2008. Quite possibly the worst time in American history to want to become a car designer. So even with a great degree and thousands of dollars in student loan debt, because I went to a private school, I was sleeping in the back of my car. I had no health insurance. The Affordable Care Act didn't exist yet. And for my generation, for millennials and Gen Z especially, our healthcare should not be tied to our jobs. Our generation does not have the same job security that my parents did. My dad was in his same civil engineering firm for something like 30 years before getting another job. And that has to be an option for everybody.
On a recent podcast, you emphasize reaching out beyond the core Dem population. Who are you speaking to? Were you thinking about? And how would you do it? Are you talking about moderate Republicans? Are you talking about people that don't vote because they don't feel any reason to? Are you talking about Dems that have left the party, or all of the above? And how would you do it? What's your plan?
Yeah, I think our strategy, and especially starting a campaign this early, I'm going to be campaigning for effectively 2 years for U.S. Senate, and that gives us the opportunity to try to talk to as many of the 10 million people who live in this state as I possibly can. I really worry about the number of people who have just given up on Democrats, given up on politics, given up on the idea that government can actually be a force for good. So we got to go talk to them. We have to talk to Republicans who are very clear-eyed that Donald Trump is not it, right? Like, I don't think trying to go out and capture MAGA Republicans to bring them onto our side is a fight that's worth taking. And we should not shift in what our values are to go talk to people. Now, how we reach people is all about tactics. I always think of the audience first, and then I back into where do I have to be to reach that group of people. I think about my brother a lot. He's a dirt biker. He's a mechanical engineer. He's in groups of friends with a bunch of pretty right-wing Republican young men. I'd love to show up at a dirt bike race with him and just sit down with a bunch of guys and say, tell me about your life. Let's get to know each other first, build a real relationship, and get out of our bubbles where we're talking to each other. We did in my campaign over 65 interviews in the first week of the campaign. We've done hundreds since. I was just on an alien show podcast. It was like Mystery Science Theater 3000, but to comment on Fox News clips. We are going to find every obscure little podcast, an influencer or manosphere podcast, just to talk to the audience. And my hope is we stop the political purity tests of the hosts or the outlet, because, I know the Joe Rogan of it all is it, right? If we don't go on Joe Rogan, we're not talking to the people who listen to Joe Rogan. Like, frankly, screw Joe Rogan. It's not about Joe Rogan. It's who are we trying to reach? And if we're not even willing to go there, then we're just saying to all of those listeners, we don't care about you. This isn't important enough for me to come and spend time with you. So we are right now on a statewide brewery tour. This is something that I said with my staff. I think they thought I was kidding the first few times I said it. And eventually they were like, oh no, she's serious. She's going to keep asking us about this because it's so early and so many people are not going to come to a town hall. They're not going to come to a Democratic club. They're not going to come to a rally. That might be too intimidating, but people are willing to come out with their friends and grab a beer and just sit around a few tables and get to know each other. We did a trial run of this idea a couple of weeks ago. We were at 4 breweries in 4 counties in 24 hours. We were in Ferndale, Warren, Flint, and Ypsilanti. It was a lot. And I genuinely thought, okay, this will be great. There will be a couple dozen people who will come out and I will sit at the tables and I will just have a conversation with people. We had 750 people come out that first weekend. So we've had to change it up. We are now giving more time at each stop. But I have seen people come out who I would never see at a Dem Club meeting. And that's what we need to be doing, just to bring people in where it's interesting, it's exciting, and something I didn't even think about until I got to the first stop was, you think about a Democratic club or a town hall. It's people sitting in rows waiting to hear from the speaker. At a brewery, I walked in and frankly, a bunch of people couldn't have cared less whether or not I was there. They weren't waiting for me. They were sitting around tables and getting to know each other and sharing reasons why they all came. And then I walked in and we had Q&A and they kept going after I left. So thinking about how do we bring people together, it was amazing. And we're going to keep doing it.
You've expressed support for humanitarian aid for Palestinians and also for Israel's right to exist and defend itself. Do you believe Israel's response has been proportional? And do you believe that genocide is occurring?
No, it has not been proportional. I mean, we're sitting here today with yet another news story that I listened to this morning of families and kids coming to get aid, coming to pick up flour and being killed. It is heartbreaking. I found myself a couple of days after October 7th, and somebody had DM'd me a death threat of my daughter because her name is Noah. And they said, she doesn't deserve to exist because you gave her an Israeli name. And how could you? And you're a colonizer. Went down this whole disgusting rabbit hole. And 2 things can be true at once, that October 7th was the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust, and the response needs to end. needs to end now. And whatever we need to do to end the violence, to end the death, so that I can't keep watching this. These are babies. And it breaks my heart every single day.
It's very, very horrible. All right, now we're going to go into our lightning round, which is lighter, but still important. Last time you wanted to scream when you were in caucus. Tell us a little about it. You don't have to name names, but if you do, you get bonus points.
I mean, during Lame Duck, there was a moment where, somehow in my family, I was still the person responsible for planning Christmas, even though I was in Lame Duck. And I'm texting my brothers, like, why is this my job? When are we getting to mom's house? I'm not the right person. And I remember them texting me, and it was, 11 o'clock at night. And they're like, how's it going? And I'm like, well, it's currently breaking news as to whether or not one of our colleagues in the House comes to work.
Wow.
That's how it's going. Joe Tate had called a call of the House, which deputized the sergeants to go get all the House members. And we were finally in the Senate watching this happen, like, okay, now we're going to get moving. We're finally going to have things happen. Then it was canceled 45 minutes later. And then everything fell apart and the House adjourned. And some of my colleagues were pretty pissy about it and wanted to pack up and go home too. And there was part of me that wouldn't have blamed them for it. Like, we relied on that other chamber to take up our bills, and they didn't. Leader Brinks brought us together in caucus and printed out a list of 247 Senate bills that had just gone up in flames, including 9 of mine. So my ghost gun bill, my reproductive health data privacy bill, our justice for survivors bill package for victims of sexual abuse in, the Boy Scouts and the Catholic Church, all of that was gone. And some of our members were like, F this, I'm going home. They didn't work for us. Why would we stay here? And I wanted to scream. And I'm really proud of what we did next, because I think we probably would have been in our right to go home, but we made a very different decision. We decided to be Democrats and stay and pass as many bills as we possibly could. And I helped orchestrate the longest session in Senate history, 30 hours. And you'll like this, at one point, the Republicans were requiring that all the bills be read out loud. They were trying to slow roll the process. And I walked across the aisle and I kind of whispered to one of the members, like, half of our caucus has given birth. So if you think reading bills out loud in cushy chairs is going to slow us down, we're going to be here for days.
Yeah.
And he didn't like that very much. But, I wanted to scream, and I'm glad that we made the decision that we did, but it was on an edge for a long time, and 30 hours to sit there. I knew that we were there for a long time. You sort of lose track of time. But students came in the next day, which meant that it was past 10 a.m. I was like, we've been here for a really long time. But we passed, over 100 bills that we sent to the governor's desk, none of them that had our names on them, because they all had to be House bills that were in our chamber. And I had to go through every single hour as the whip to really just quickly assess, of the thousands of bills that were sitting in our chamber. We did chunks at a time to just go through all of them and say, what do we have support for? What has a chance? Which bills have issues? And try to put up chunks of bills at a time and put them up for votes. And it was exhausting, but probably the most rewarding moment I've had as a Democrat, and a Democrat in a position of power, since taking office.
What's more your vibe, moving more towards the center or embracing progressive policies to the left?
I think embracing policies that make a difference in people's lives. I'm never going to change who I am. I am going to work my ass off to bring more people onto our side. And a good example of this we saw with the Dobbs decision. There was a lot of push by progressive groups to use so-called inclusive language, to say things like birthing persons instead of women. And I immediately, that, kind of set my hackles up, because I recognized that we needed to bring people who didn't agree with us already onto our side. I was canvassing and campaigning for other House reps, and I remember being, downriver in Macomb County, and I was able to lean into my Catholic background, what I knew I was raised to believe that abortion actually was, which then I learned was very wrong as an adult. But to talk to people and say, every woman knows somebody who's lost a pregnancy or has had a miscarriage or has had an ectopic pregnancy. And we were able to do something very progressive, not only with Prop 3, but then passing the Reproductive Health Act, then passing a lot of legislation that I've been pushing for, not because I moved to the center, but because we strategically brought more people onto our side.
All right, this is Gen Z TikTok language that
Oh,
I have
boy.
no idea. I have never
great.
heard it before. You're much closer to that than I am. But what's your Roman Empire in Gen Z TikTok lingo? What's something you obsess about daily?
Oh, daily sinkholes. I am terrified of sinkholes. Every time I see them, do you remember there was the Corvette Museum and there was a sinkhole that popped up under it and it just like ate all the cars? That is truly my Roman Empire. It feels like such an intractable problem. And I think about it every single day.
All right, that was convincing. Now I'm going to be afraid too. What is more hell on earth for you? Donor calling, your call time, or the Mackinac Policy Convention?
Oh, the Mackinac Policy Convention. I have, we have to change money in politics, but I count myself very lucky. I have a lot of really good donors who they support me because they support me, and we check in and they ask questions about my family. I would much rather be doing those calls than be trapped on an island for a week with every lobbyist and every Republican who's cosplaying like it's plantation time, which is just deeply uncomfortable. It's part of what we have to do, but I hope in my lifetime that the Detroit Chamber of Commerce Policy Conference is in Detroit.
You think?
What a concept.
Yeah, wow. Well, I think we'll advocate for that going forward. All right, which is the better policy idea? Taxing the rich or making everyone in the legislature have to work a minimum wage job? And they wrote my question once a month. Fuck that. For a month. I'd like to see that. Which one do you prefer?
Is both an answer?
I like that.
I feel like we should take
yeah,
both. We
I
should.
agree.
We absolutely, I'm supportive of the ballot initiative that's circulating now to tax millionaires so that we can fund our schools. Michigan, by the way, is a state that when you adjust for inflation, we have been operating with the same revenue that we had in 1968, despite gaining 3 million more people in population. So if we could have cut our way to prosperity, we would have been there a long time ago. So that's long overdue. But yeah, everybody in the legislature should have to work a minimum wage job. Like if you haven't, particularly in the service industry, I would like everybody to be a server or work retail and just have to go through that experience of people shitting on you constantly.
I'm going to ask Jeremy Moss if he'll do a stint in a Coney Island for a day. Anyway, what's a hill you'll die on that has nothing to do with politics?
It's in politics, but I see it all over the place, and I think it's just the internet era. Sentence fragments. Why are we writing everything in sentence fragments? Can't we just write whole last sentences and speak in normal language? Just stop it. Like there's a use in time. My staff is going to listen to this and they're going to hate me. But there is some time where a sentence fragment can prove a point. It should not be every tweet. It should not be every Instagram post. Write a damn sentence.
I might have to disagree there. Time is of the essence here. All right. What is your favorite movie that you love to rewatch when you're feeling stressed and you want to just decompress?
Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Why? What do you like about it?
This is very nerdy. My dream growing up was I wanted to be a stop motion animator. Really wanted to do it. I loved Wallace and Gromit, and my parents were divorced, so I would go to my dad's house, and I didn't have any friends in that neighborhood, and I would be sculpting Wallace and Gromit figures, and I would take photos of them and then use the negative strips and tape them together and try to make a movie. So I just thought, when Wes Anderson went full stop motion, and it was the most brilliant movie I've ever seen. So I watch it all the time.
All right, last question, and we'll unlock the door. Why are you running for Senate, Mallory McMorrow?
I'm running for Senate because everything is broken. This is a moment where Donald Trump is president again. And we have plainclothes officers invading all of our communities, kidnapping people off the street. He's defying the Constitution. He's ripping away Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security, breaking every norm possible, and people voted for it. And I'm also somebody who, again, I graduated into the recession, and I talk to a lot of people who say it's been broken for a long time. It wasn't just Donald Trump. I want to make things better for my daughter. I want to make sure there's opportunity for her to stay in Michigan, and we have to get to a place where we can cut through all of this bullshit, talk to each other again without compromising who we are.
Thank you so much for coming today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.